When the popular kids dared her to sing at the school talent show, they expected her to crumble under the spotlight, to give them something to laugh about for weeks. What they didn't expect was for her voice to stop every conversation, silence every whisper, and leave an entire auditorium of parents and teachers sitting in stunned reverence. And they certainly didn't expect the broken single father in the back row, a man who hadn't smiled in 2 years, to recognize something in her, trembling melody that would change both their lives forever. This is the story of how one moment of cruelty became a miracle, how a joke became a journey, and how two lost souls found exactly what they didn't know they were searching for. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Westmont Elementary buzzed with their familiar electric hum as another dreary November afternoon cast. Long shadows across the empty hallways. In classroom 4B, 9-year-old Ruby Murphy sat at her desk, carefully erasing pencil marks from a worksheet she'd already completed twice. Her small fingers worked methodically, trying to make the paper look fresh and new. Because she knew tomorrow she'd have to use it again. The same worksheet, the same worn pencil stub, the same quiet routine that had become her survival strategy in a world that seemed determined to overlook her. Ruby's faded blue dress, one of only 3 she owned, hung loose on her small frame. It had been her older sister's before the accident, and before that, it belonged to a cousin whose name Ruby couldn't quite remember. The fabric was soft from countless washings, and there was a small tear near the left shoulder that Ruby had learned to hide by keeping her arm positioned just so. Her shoes, black with scuffed toes, were a size too big, but they were sturdy, and Ruby had learned that sturdy mattered more than style when you were walking 2 miles to school every morning. The other students had long since rushed out to catch their buses or meet their parents in the pickup line, leaving behind the typical debris of a 4th-grade classroom, crumpled papers, forgotten pencils, and the lingering scent of apple juice and graham crackers. Ruby preferred these quiet moments after the bell rang. No one stared at her during silent reading time because her book was 3 grade levels below everyone else's. No one noticed that she ate the same peanut butter sandwich every day, carefully wrapped in a piece of wax paper that she'd fold and save for tomorrow. No one whispered about how she never had money for the book fair or field trip permission slips. Mrs. Henderson, her teacher, glanced up from her desk where she was grading spelling tests. "Ruby, sweetie, the late bus won't be here for another 20 minutes. You don't have to keep working on that worksheet." Ruby looked up with eyes that seemed older than her 9 years, deep brown eyes that held a wariness most adults never noticed, but which spoke of too many disappointments, too many promises broken, too many times she'd learned not to hope for things that seemed to come so easily to other people. "I know, Mrs. Henderson. I just want to make sure it's perfect." Mrs. Henderson's heart gave that familiar little twist she'd felt so many times this year when Ruby spoke. There was something about this girl that broke through all her professional boundaries. The way Ruby never complained, never asked for help, never seemed to expect anything from anyone. She was like a small ghost haunting the edges of childhood, present but not quite part of the vibrant, chaotic world of elementary school life. You know, Ruby, you don't always have to be perfect. Sometimes it's okay to just be you. Ruby smiled, a small, careful smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Yes, ma'am." But perfect was all Ruby knew how to be. Perfect meant invisible, and invisible meant safe. Invisible meant no one asked questions about why she sometimes fell asleep during math class, or why she hoarded crackers from snack time in her desk, or why she never talked about her home life during show and tell. Invisible meant no one noticed that she'd been wearing the same 3 dresses in rotation since school started, or that her homework was sometimes done in crayon because that's all she had at home. What Ruby didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that she wasn't nearly as invisible as she thought. Mrs. Henderson had noticed everything, from the way Ruby's stomach rumbled during morning announcements to the careful way she made her supplies last far longer than they should. The school counselor had noticed too. Though their conversations always hit the same wall, Ruby was polite, grateful, and completely unwilling to admit that anything was wrong. And 3 rows behind Ruby's carefully organized desk, Madison Taylor was also watching. Madison, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and brand-name clothes, with her circle of friends who hung on her every word, with her confidence that came from never having to worry about where her next meal would come from, or whether the electricity would be on when she got home. Madison had been watching Ruby for weeks now, not with concern or kindness, but with the calculating interest of someone who'd identified weakness and was waiting for the right moment to exploit it. "Hey, Ashley," Madison whispered to her best friend as they packed their designer backpacks. "Did you see the flyer about the talent show?" Ashley Riley, equally polished and equally sharp, followed Madison's gaze to where Ruby sat hunched over her worksheet. "Yeah, my mom already signed me up for my violin piece." "Why?" Madison's smile had an edge to it that would have made Mrs. Henderson nervous if she'd been paying attention. "I think we should encourage more people to participate. Make it more inclusive. The talent show. It happened every year right before Thanksgiving break, a beloved tradition where students could showcase their abilities, where proud parents filled the auditorium with cameras and applause, where ribbons were awarded and memories were made. For most students, it was an opportunity to shine. For some, it was a chance to conquer their fears. But Madison Taylor was about to turn it into something else entirely, as Ruby carefully placed her worksheet in her folder and began the ritual of organizing her desk for tomorrow. She had no idea that her name was about to become the center of a conversation that would change everything. She didn't know that Madison and her friends were already planning, already plotting, already setting in motion a series of events that would either destroy what little confidence she had left or transform her life in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. The late bus rumbled to life outside, its engine echoing through the empty hallways. Ruby gathered her things, a worn backpack that used to be navy blue but had faded to an indeterminate gray, a jacket with a broken zipper that she'd learned to hold closed with her arms, and the careful composure that she wore like armor against. A world that had already taught her that dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. Mrs. Henderson watched her go, that familiar knot of concern tightening in her chest. There was something about Ruby Murphy that reminded her why she'd become a teacher in the first place. Not for the students who already had everything, but for the ones who needed someone to believe in them, even when they'd stopped believing in themselves. If she'd known what Madison Taylor was planning, Mrs. Henderson would have intervened immediately. If she'd known that Ruby's carefully constructed invisible shield was about to be shattered in the most public way possible, she would have found a way to protect her. But she didn't know, and Ruby didn't know. And sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the most ordinary moments of not knowing what's coming next. The fluorescent lights continued their electric hum as Ruby disappeared down the hallway, her footsteps echoing softly against the polished floors. Behind her, Madison Taylor smiled as she pulled out her phone, already composing the text that would set everything in motion. Neither of them knew that 12 miles away, a broken single father named Arthur Stewart was staring at his own reflection in the bathroom mirror of his small apartment, trying to find the strength to face another day in a life that had lost all its color. Neither of them knew that their paths were about to cross in the most unexpected way, or that Ruby's quiet voice was about to wake something in Arthur's heart that he thought had died forever. Sometimes the most powerful stories begin not with grand gestures or dramatic moments, but with a 9-year-old girl trying to be perfect, a mean girl looking for entertainment, and a man who'd forgotten how to hope. Sometimes miracles disguise themselves as ordinary Tuesday afternoons, waiting, for exactly the right moment to change everything. Arthur Stewart had once been the kind of father other parents envied. The kind who showed up to every soccer game with homemade snacks and a voice that carried across the field, cheering louder than anyone else. The kind who turned bedtime stories into elaborate productions, complete with different voices for every character and sound effects that made his daughter giggle until she hiccuped. The kind who believed that love could solve anything, protect anyone, make any dream come true if you just tried hard enough. That man felt like a stranger now. The bathroom mirror in his cramped downtown apartment reflected back someone he barely recognized. Stubble that had grown into an unkempt beard, eyes that had lost their spark somewhere in the wreckage of the last 2 years, shoulders that carried the weight of guilt and grief like a physical burden. At 34, Arthur looked a decade older, worn down by the relentless grind of single parenthood and the constant ache of loss that never quite dulled, no matter how much time passed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The apartment around him told the story of a life that had been hastily reassembled from broken pieces, mismatched furniture from thrift stores and yard sales, because the comfortable couch and dining room set had been sold. To pay for Emma's medical bills, a kitchen table that wobbled unless you put a folded napkin under one leg, where father and daughter ate most of their meals, in the kind of silence that spoke of too much sadness and not enough words to express it. Boxes still stacked in the corner, 2 years after moving in, because unpacking them felt too much like admitting this was permanent, that the life they'd built before was never coming back. Arthur's reflections stared back at him as he splashed. Cold water on his face, a daily ritual that was supposed to wake him up, but mostly just reminded him how exhausted he was. Not just physically tired, though the double shifts at the warehouse loading dock certainly contributed to that, but soul deep exhausted. The kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix, that coffee couldn't cure, that settled into your bones and made every day feel like you were walking through mud. He'd been an insurance adjuster before, good at it too, had his own office with a window, wore a tie to work every day, made enough money to buy Emma the art supplies she loved and take weekend trips to the Children's Museum 2 towns over. He'd been building something back then, a career, a future, a college fund for Emma. But insurance adjusters needed to be reliable, needed to show up consistently, needed to focus on details and deadlines, all things that became impossible when your 8-year-old daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. The first absence had been understanding. Of course, he needed to be at the hospital for Emma's initial treatment. The second and third absences were met with sympathy and flexibility. But when weeks turned into months, when Emma's treatment became his full-time job, when he missed more days than he worked, understanding turned into frustration, sympathy became impatience, and flexibility hardened into ultimatums. He'd chosen Emma, of course. He'd choose her every time, in every universe, without hesitation. But choosing meant losing the job, losing the insurance, losing the apartment they'd called home since she was 3. It meant moving into this place with its thin walls and broken air conditioning and neighbors who played music too loud at night. It meant taking whatever work he could find that would let him be available when Emma needed him, which was often, especially during the bad months. The warehouse job paid by the hour and didn't care about your story. Show up, move boxes, collect your check. It was mindless work that left his body tired enough to sleep most nights. The supervisors didn't ask questions about his past or his plans for the future. They didn't care that he'd once had an office or wore a tie or dreamed of bigger things. They just needed someone who could lift 40 pounds and follow simple instructions, and Arthur Stewart could do both of those things, even when everything else felt impossible. Emma had been in remission for 8 months now. 8 months of clean scans and normal blood work, and doctors who smiled when they delivered test results. 8 months of watching her slowly return to the vibrant, creative, impossibly optimistic girl she'd been before cancer tried to steal her childhood. She was thriving in her new school, making friends, bringing home art projects that covered every available surface of their small refrigerator. But Arthur hadn't bounced back the same way. The fear lived in him now, a constant presence that whispered, what if scenarios in quiet moments? What if the cancer came back? What if he couldn't afford the next treatment? What if he wasn't strong enough, smart enough, good enough to keep her safe? The confidence he'd once had as a father felt shattered, replaced by a hypervigilance that exhausted him and a guilt that ate at him daily. He'd been a good father before the diagnosis, but good felt inadequate now. He should have caught it earlier, should have insisted on more tests when she complained of being tired, should have known that the bruises on her legs weren't from normal playground falls, should have been better, smarter, more attentive. The rational part of his mind knew that 8-year-olds got tired, the kids got bruises, that he'd done everything right. But the rational part of his mind was usually drowned out by the voice that reminded him how close he'd come to losing her. How many nights he'd sat in hospital chairs praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. The worst part was how isolated it had made him. Other parents at Emma's school were friendly enough, but they lived in a different world, one where the biggest worry was whether their kid made the soccer team or remembered their lunch money. They couldn't understand the relief he felt every morning when Emma woke up feeling well, or the panic that gripped him when she mentioned a headache or complained of being tired. He'd stopped accepting invitations to play dates and birthday parties because watching other families' easy happiness felt like staring into a life he'd lost and might never get back. Even well-meaning friends had drifted away. What do you say to someone whose 8-year-old daughter has cancer? How do you complain about your own problems to someone fighting for their kid's life? The isolation had been gradual but complete. And now Arthur existed in a strange, in-between space. Not quite a cancer parent anymore, but not able to return to the carefree world of normal parenthood either. Emma was getting ready for school, in the next room, and Arthur could hear her humming as she packed her backpack. She hummed constantly now, little melodies that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Sometimes they were songs from the radio, sometimes made-up tunes that she'd sing under her breath while drawing or doing homework. The humming had started during treatment, when everything hurt and nothing felt normal. The nurses had told him it was common, music as medicine, melody as comfort. But Emma's humming had continued long after the treatment ended, and Arthur had begun to realize it wasn't just a coping mechanism anymore. It was joy, pure and simple. His daughter had found her voice again, even when his own seemed permanently lost. "Dad!" Emma's voice carried from the kitchen. "My backpack zipper is stuck again." Arthur pulled himself away from the mirror and the weight of his own reflection. This was what mattered now. Showing up for her, being present for the small moments that made up their daily life. The backpack zipper that needed gentle coaxing, the breakfast that needed to be made, the ride to school that filled the gap between one day and the next. He didn't know that 12 miles away, a 9-year-old girl was carefully organizing her desk and trying to be invisible. He didn't know that Ruby Murphy existed, or that she spent her afternoons erasing worksheets to use again tomorrow, or that her quiet strength in the face of hardship was exactly the kind of courage he'd forgotten how to recognize in himself. But sometimes the most important connections begin long before the people involved have any idea they're connected. Sometimes healing starts not with grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but with two people who've learned to carry their pain quietly, preparing to discover that they're not quite as alone as they thought. Arthur Stewart fixed his daughter's backpack zipper and made her breakfast and drove her to school, not knowing that this ordinary Tuesday was about to become anything but ordinary. Not knowing that a talent show and a cruel joke and a 9-year-old's voice were about to remind him that hope wasn't something you lost forever. Sometimes it was just something you forgot how to hear. The Westmont Elementary parking lot was nearly empty at 4:30 in the afternoon, save for a few scattered cars belonging to teachers staying late to grade papers or prepare for the next day. Arthur Stewart sat in his 15-year-old Honda Civic, engine ticking as it cooled, staring at the brick facade of the school through his cracked windshield. He was early, again. Emma's after-school art club didn't end until 5:00, but Arthur had developed the habit of arriving early for everything involving his daughter. It was one of the many small anxieties that had taken root during her treatment. This need to be present and available at all times, as if his constant vigilance could somehow protect her from the unpredictable cruelties of the world. The art club had been Emma's idea. When they'd moved to this district 8 months ago, she'd seen the flyer on the first day of school and immediately asked if she could join. Arthur had hesitated, not because of the modest fee, though money was always tight, but because it meant trusting someone else with Emma's care for an hour each week. The rational part of his mind knew that Mrs. Patterson, the art teacher, was experienced and responsible. The fearful part of his mind whispered about all the things that could go wrong when he wasn't there to watch over her. But Emma had looked at him with those huge brown eyes that had seen too much for an 8-year-old and said, "Please, Dad, I promise I'll be careful." And Arthur had realized that being careful was his job, not hers. Her job was to be a kid again, to find joy in finger paints and construction paper, to remember what it felt like to create something beautiful just because she wanted to. So here he was, every Tuesday afternoon, sitting in the parking lot like a helicopter parent who couldn't quite land. Sometimes he brought a book, though he usually found himself reading the same page over and over, too distracted by worry to concentrate. Sometimes he tried to use the time to return phone calls or pay bills on his phone. Today, he was just sitting, listening to the November wind rattle the bare branches of the oak trees that lined the school's front entrance. That's when he heard it. At first, it was so faint he thought it might be the wind itself, or maybe a radio, playing somewhere nearby. But as he rolled down his window and listened more carefully, Arthur realized it was a voice, a young voice, singing. The sound was coming from somewhere behind the school, near the playground equipment that sat empty in the late afternoon light. Arthur got out of his car and followed the melody, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. The voice was untrained but pure, carrying a tune with the kind of natural pitch and rhythm that couldn't be taught. It reminded him of Emma's humming, but stronger, more confident, as if the singer was alone and free to express something that might otherwise stay hidden. As he rounded the corner of the building, Arthur spotted a small figure sitting on one of the swings, pumping her legs lazily while she sang. She was facing away from him, her dark hair catching the golden light of the late afternoon sun. She looked to be about Emma's age, wearing a faded blue dress that had seen better days and shoes that seemed a size too big. But her voice filled the empty playground with a sweetness that made Arthur's chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't immediately identify. She was singing an old song, something Arthur remembered his own mother humming when he was young. Amazing Grace, but not the traditional version. This was slower, more personal, with little improvisations and runs that showed an intuitive understanding of melody that took most singers years to develop. The girl wasn't performing for anyone. She was simply singing because the song needed to be sung, because the moment called for music, because sometimes the only way to make sense of the world was to add your own voice to it. Arthur stood transfixed, barely breathing, afraid that any movement might break the spell. He hadn't been moved by music, really moved, since Emma's diagnosis. During the worst months, when she was too sick to listen to anything and the house stayed silent for days at a time, music had felt like a luxury they couldn't afford, a reminder of easier times when life had room for beauty and joy. Even now, with Emma healthy and humming constantly, Arthur found himself emotionally numb to most things that used to bring him pleasure. But this was different. This unknown girl's voice cut through his defenses like sunlight through storm clouds, reminding him of something he'd forgotten, that beauty existed in the world not because life was easy, but because people chose to create it anyway. Because sometimes the most profound songs came from the deepest struggles, and sometimes the clearest voices belonged to those who had every reason to stay silent. The song ended, and the girl let the swing slow to a gentle stop. She sat quietly, for a moment, as if savoring the lingering notes in the air. Then she checked a small watch on her wrist, probably picked up at a yard sale, Arthur noticed, the kind of practical timepiece that worked but wasn't pretty, and began gathering her things from where they sat scattered in the wood chips beneath the swing set. Arthur knew he should say something, should introduce himself, compliment her singing, ask her name, but the words felt stuck in his throat, weighed down by 2 years of isolation and the fear that his voice would sound rusty from disuse. What did you say to a young girl you didn't know? How did you explain that her song had just cracked something open in your chest that you'd thought was permanently sealed? The girl stood and shouldered her worn backpack, then began walking toward the front of the school. Arthur realized she was probably heading to the bus line or maybe walking home, a possibility that sent a small spike of concern through him. It was getting dark earlier these days, and this neighborhood, while not dangerous, wasn't the kind of place where kids should be walking alone after dusk. "Excuse me?" he called out, his voice rougher than he'd intended. The girl turned, and Arthur got his first look at her face. She had the kind of features that would probably be striking when she was older, high cheekbones and expressive eyes that seemed to hold more wisdom than any 9-year-old should possess. But there was also something guarded about her expression, a wariness that suggested she'd learned to be careful around adults she didn't know. "Yes, sir?" she said politely, but Arthur could see her taking a small step backward, positioning herself so she could run if necessary. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I heard you singing, and it was beautiful, really beautiful." A flush of color crept up the girl's neck, and she looked down at her shoes. "Thank you, I was just waiting for my bus." "You have a remarkable voice," Arthur continued, trying to keep his tone gentle and non-threatening. "Have you ever taken singing lessons?" The girl shook her head. "No, sir, we can't. I just sing sometimes, when no one's around." The way she said it, with that careful correction and the unconscious admission of financial limitation, made Arthur's heart clench. He recognized the verbal habits of a kid who'd learned to guard family secrets, who knew that saying too much about home life could lead to uncomfortable questions and unwanted attention. "Well, you're very talented," he said. "I'm Arthur, by the way, Arthur Stewart. My daughter Emma goes here. She's in Mrs. Patterson's art club." "I'm Ruby," the girl replied, still not quite meeting his eyes. "Ruby Murphy." "It's nice to meet you, Ruby. That song you were singing, do you know others like it?" Ruby nodded shyly. "I know a lot of songs. I hear them on the radio sometimes, or people singing in church, and I just remember them." Before Arthur could respond, a yellow school bus rumbled into the parking lot, its diesel engine loud in the quiet afternoon air. Ruby glanced toward it, then back at Arthur. "That's my bus," she said. "I have to go." "Of course. It was really lovely meeting you, Ruby. I hope I'll hear you sing again sometime." Ruby gave him a small smile, the first genuine expression he'd seen from her, and hurried toward the bus. Arthur watched her climb the steps and find a seat near the front, her small figure barely visible through the window as the bus pulled away. He stood in the empty parking lot for several minutes after. The bus disappeared, trying to process what had just happened. It wasn't just that Ruby had a beautiful voice. Though she certainly did, it was something deeper, the way the music had seemed to flow from her so naturally, as if singing was as essential to her as breathing. The way she'd transformed that empty playground into something sacred just by adding her voice to the silence. And there was something else, something that made Arthur's chest feel tight with recognition and empathy. Ruby Murphy sang like someone who needed music to survive, who'd found in melody what other people found in security or comfort or home. She sang like someone who understood that sometimes art was the only thing standing between you and despair. Arthur knew that feeling. He'd forgotten it for a while, buried it under layers of fear and responsibility and the grinding dailiness of just trying to keep going. But hearing Ruby sing had awakened something in him, some long dormant part of his soul that remembered what it felt like to be moved by beauty, to believe that the world held wonders worth discovering. He didn't know, as he walked back to his car to wait for Emma's art club to end, that Ruby Murphy's life was about to be turned upside down by a cruel joke disguised as an opportunity. He didn't know that in just a few days, a group of popular kids would dare her to sing in front of the entire school, expecting her to fail spectacularly for their entertainment. But he would know soon enough. And when that moment came, when Ruby stood on that stage with her voice trembling and her hands shaking, Arthur Stewart would be in the audience, recognizing in her courage something that he'd lost and desperately needed to find again. He would be there to witness what happened when a broken man and a forgotten girl reminded each other that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unlikely places. For now, though, he simply sat in his car and waited for his daughter, humming Amazing Grace under his breath and marveling at how a stranger's song could remind you that your heart was still capable of being surprised by joy. The next Tuesday couldn't come fast enough for Arthur Stewart. All week, he'd found himself thinking about Ruby Murphy's voice, the way her song had cut through the November air like a promise of something better. He'd caught himself humming Amazing Grace while loading boxes at the warehouse, had found the melody playing in his head during the long drives home, had even started listening to music again, something he hadn't done voluntarily in over 2 years. Emma had noticed the change immediately, the way kids always do when their parents shift in ways too subtle for adult radar. "Dad, you're different this week," she'd said over breakfast on Friday morning, studying his face with the serious concentration she usually reserved for her art projects. "Different how?" Arthur had asked, genuinely curious about what his 8-year-old daughter could see that he couldn't. "Lighter," Emma had said simply, then returned to her cereal as if she hadn't just delivered one of the most profound observations anyone had made about Arthur in months. Lighter. Arthur rolled the word around in his mind as he parked in the same spot at Westmont Elementary the following Tuesday. It was true, he realized, the constant weight he'd been carrying, not gone, but somehow more manageable. As if hearing Ruby sing had reminded him that the world still contained beauty, that there were still reasons to pay attention, to stay present, to hope for small miracles. At exactly 4:30, he got out of his car and walked around to the playground behind the school. Ruby was there again, sitting on the same swing, her worn backpack at her feet and her voice rising into the late afternoon sky. This time she was singing something he didn't recognize, a melody that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. Her, wordless and haunting and utterly her own. Arthur stopped at a respectful distance and listened, not wanting to interrupt but unable to walk away. Ruby's voice had the same pure quality he remembered from the week before, but today there was something different about it. More confident, perhaps, or maybe just less careful, as if she was allowing herself to truly let go in a way that most people never learned to do. When the song ended, Ruby noticed him standing there. Instead of the wariness he'd seen the week before, she offered him a small wave. "Hi, Mr. Stewart," she said, her voice carrying easily across the playground. "Hello, Ruby. That was beautiful. Really beautiful." I don't think I've heard that song before. Ruby's cheeks flushed pink. I made it up. Sometimes I just hear melodies in my head and I have to sing them or they'll get stuck there all day. Arthur felt something shift in his chest. Recognition, admiration, a kind of protective instinct he usually reserved for Emma. This girl had a gift, a real gift, and she was developing it entirely on her own, without lessons or encouragement, or anyone to tell her that what she was doing was extraordinary. Ruby, can I ask you something? Arthur said, moving a little closer but still maintaining a respectful distance. Do you like to sing? I mean, really like it? Ruby considered the question with the seriousness of someone much older. It's not that I like it, she said finally. It's more like I need it. Does that make sense? Arthur's breath caught. Yes, he said quietly. It makes perfect sense. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who understood. Something about the necessity of beauty in a world that often seemed determined to crush it. Then Ruby glanced at her watch and began gathering her things. Ruby, wait, Arthur said, the words coming out before he'd fully thought them through. Would you like to meet my daughter? She's in art club, but they should be finishing up soon. I think you two might like each other. Ruby hesitated, clearly torn between curiosity and the ingrained caution that seemed to govern most of her interactions with adults. I don't want to miss my bus, she said carefully. Of course not. Maybe we could just walk over to the art room. If you miss the bus, I'd be happy to give you a ride home. Arthur paused, realizing how that might sound to a 9-year-old who didn't know him well. I mean, if that's okay with whoever takes care of you at home. It's just me and my aunt, Ruby said. She works until 6 anyway. The casual way she said it told Arthur volumes about Ruby's home life, the kind of household where a 9-year-old was expected to be self-sufficient, where adults worked long hours just to keep things together, where there probably wasn't much energy left over for things like music lessons or encouragement of artistic talents. Well then, would you like to meet Emma? She loves music too, though. She's more of an artist than a singer. Ruby nodded slowly. Okay, but just for a few minutes. They walked together toward the main building, Ruby's smaller steps working to keep pace with Arthur's longer ones. He found himself slowing down automatically, the way he did with Emma, and was surprised by how natural it felt to adjust his stride for this girl he barely knew. Mr. Stewart? Ruby said as they reached the school side entrance. Yes? Why do you come early to pick up Emma? I mean, most parents just pull up right when the activities end. Arthur was quiet for a moment, considering how much truth to share with a 9-year-old. I worry about her, he said finally. She was sick for a while, and I guess I got in the habit of wanting to be nearby in case she needed me. Ruby nodded, as if this made perfect sense to her. My sister used to worry about me like that before the accident. Sometimes I miss having someone worry about me. The matter-of-fact way she said it, without self-pity, but with a kind of quiet longing, made Arthur's heart clench. He wanted to ask about her sister, about the accident, about what it was like to be 9 years old and apparently taking care of yourself most of the time. But something in Ruby's posture suggested that those were conversations for later, when trust had been established and tested. Instead, he said, well, maybe we can worry about each other a little bit. Friends do that, don't they? Ruby looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. Are we friends? I'd like to be, if that's okay with you. Ruby considered this as they walked down the hallway toward the art room. I don't have very many friends, she said eventually. Neither do I, Arthur admitted. Maybe we can figure it out together. The art room was buzzing with the controlled chaos of creative 8- and 9-year-olds finishing up their projects. Mrs. Patterson, a woman in her 50s with paint-stained fingers and the kind of gentle energy that made kids feel safe, was helping students clean up their workstations while commenting enthusiastically on their creations. Arthur spotted Emma immediately. She was always easy to find, with her dark curls and the intense concentration she brought to everything she did. Today, she was putting the finishing touches on what looked like a watercolor painting of a tree, her tongue poking out slightly, the way it always did when she was focused. "Emma?" Arthur called softly. She looked up and smiled, the kind of pure, unguarded smile that reminded Arthur why he'd fought so hard to keep her safe. "Dad, look what I made. It's the tree outside our apartment, but I made the leaves all different colors because I thought it would be more interesting than just brown." "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Emma, I'd like you to meet someone. This is Ruby. Ruby, this is my daughter, Emma." Emma looked at Ruby with the frank curiosity of childhood, taking in her worn dress and two big shoes without judgment, but with obvious interest. "Hi, do you go to school here? I don't think I've seen you before." "I'm in 4th grade, Ruby said quietly. "I think you're in 3rd? "Yeah. Do you like art? Mrs. Patterson is really nice, and she lets us try all kinds of different things. Last week we did pottery, and next week we're going to learn about printmaking." Ruby glanced at the paintings and drawings scattered around the room, her eyes lighting up with genuine interest. "I've never done anything like this," she said, "but it looks fun." "You should join," Emma said with the impulsive generosity that made Arthur so proud of her. "I bet Mrs. Patterson would let you, even if it's the middle of the year. She's always saying that art is for everyone." Mrs. Patterson, who had been listening to the conversation while helping another student, approached with a warm smile. "Did I hear someone interested in joining our little group?" Ruby looked suddenly shy again, but Arthur could see the longing in her expression. "I was just looking," she said quickly. "I don't really know anything about art. The best artists start by not knowing anything," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "That's what makes it exciting, discovering what you're capable of creating." "Are you Ruby Murphy? Mrs. Henderson has mentioned you. She says you're very creative." Ruby blinked in surprise. "She talked about me?" "Only good things," Mrs. Patterson assured her. "Teachers notice when students have special talents, even if those talents are quiet ones." Arthur watched Ruby process this information, saw something shift in her expression as she realized that she wasn't as invisible as she thought, that adults in her life had noticed her, had seen value in her, had talked about her potential even when she wasn't around to hear it. "The thing is," Ruby said hesitantly, "my aunt works a lot, and I don't think we can afford—" "Don't worry about that," Mrs. Patterson said quickly. "We have scholarships for students who need them. The most important thing is whether you want to be here." Ruby looked around the room again, at Emma's encouraging smile, at Arthur's kind eyes, at Mrs. Patterson's paint-stained apron and genuine warmth. Arthur could see her weighing possibilities, calculating risks, trying to decide if this was the kind of good thing that would actually turn out to be good, or if it was another disappointment waiting to happen. "Can I think about it?" Ruby asked. "Finally, of course," Mrs. Patterson said, "but don't think too long. We're starting a special project next week that I think you'd really enjoy. Really enjoy." Ruby's bus was honking in the parking lot, and she gathered her backpack with practiced efficiency. "Thank you," she said to Mrs. Patterson, then turned to Emma. "It was nice meeting you." "You too. I hope you decide to join," Emma said. "It would be fun to have another friend in art club." As Ruby hurried toward the exit, Arthur called after her. "Ruby, same time next week?" She turned back with a smile that was brighter than any he'd seen from her yet. "Same time next week," she confirmed. Arthur watched her run toward the bus, her backpack bouncing against her back, her two big shoes slapping against the pavement. Emma came to stand beside him, slipping her small hand into his. "I like her," Emma said simply. "She seems sad, but also strong, kind of like you were when I was sick." Arthur squeezed his daughter's hand, marveling at her ability to see so clearly into the hearts of others. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I like her too." As they walked to their car, Arthur found himself thinking about friendship, how long it had been since he'd even considered the possibility of connecting with someone new, how isolating the last 2 years had been, how much he'd forgotten about the simple pleasure of caring about another person's well-being. Ruby Murphy was about to face the biggest challenge of her young life, though none of them knew it yet. In just a few days, Madison Taylor would put her cruel plan into motion, and Ruby would be standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people expected to fail for their entertainment. But now she wouldn't be facing it entirely alone. Now she had Arthur Stewart in her corner, a man who recognized her gift, who understood what it meant to carry pain quietly, who knew something about the courage it took to keep going when the world seemed determined to break you. Sometimes the most important friendships begin not with grand gestures or dramatic moments, but with a man choosing to show up early and a girl choosing to trust that maybe, just maybe, not all adults would disappoint her. Sometimes healing happens one small act of kindness at a time, one song at a time, one moment of recognition at a time. Arthur Stewart was about to remember what it felt like to fight for someone other than his daughter. And Ruby Murphy was about to discover that she wasn't quite as alone in the world as she'd always believed. Friday morning arrived at Westmont Elementary with the kind of crisp energy that made everyone move a little faster, speak a little louder, and smile a little brighter. The weekend was just hours away, and even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz with anticipation. In the main hallway, colorful flyers had appeared overnight, taped to lockers and bulletin boards with the kind of official enthusiasm that only elementary schools could muster. Westmont Elementary Annual Talent Show, the bright yellow papers, announced in bold letters, Friday, December 15th, 7 p.m. in the school auditorium. Showcase your special talents. Registration deadline, Monday, December 4th. Ruby Murphy noticed the flyers during her morning walk to her locker, but she didn't stop to read them carefully. Talent shows were for other kids. Kids with piano lessons and dance classes, kids whose parents had money for costumes and could take time off work to sit in auditorium chairs and cheer. Ruby had learned long ago not to linger too long looking at things that weren't meant for her, but Madison Taylor had been waiting all week for these flyers to appear. She and her friends clustered around one of the announcements before first period, their voices carrying that particular excitement that came with planning something they thought was brilliant. Perfect timing, Madison said, smoothing her perfectly straightened blonde hair as she studied the registration requirements. Sign-ups start Monday. That gives us the whole weekend to set everything up. Ashley Riley leaned closer to read over Madison's shoulder. Are you sure this is going to work? What if she actually doesn't sound terrible? Madison's laugh had an edge to it that would have made Mrs. Henderson nervous if she'd been within earshot. Trust me, I've heard her humming. In class, she's probably never even sung in front of another person, let alone a whole auditorium. She'll freeze up completely. But what if she doesn't? Asked Jessica, the third member of their tight-knit group. What if she says no? She won't say no, Madison said with the confidence of someone who'd spent years studying the social dynamics of elementary school. Kids like Ruby Murphy never say no when the popular kids pay attention to them. She'll be so grateful that we're even talking to her that she'll agree to whatever we suggest. The plan was simple, elegant in its cruelty, and perfectly designed to provide maximum entertainment with minimal risk to the perpetrators. They would approach Ruby sometime over the weekend or early next week, probably when she was alone and therefore most vulnerable to their sudden interest. They would be sweet, friendly, encouraging, everything Ruby probably wasn't used to receiving from her classmates. They would tell her about the talent show, mention how they'd heard she had a beautiful voice, a strategic lie that would make Ruby feel special and seen, and suggest that she should definitely sign up to perform. They would offer to help her register, maybe even hint that they were planning to perform too, making it seem like a group effort rather than a setup. Then they would sit back and watch as Ruby Murphy stood on that stage in front of hundreds of people, parents, teachers, students, siblings, and either sang so quietly no one could hear her, or forgot the words completely, or simply stood there in terrified silence until someone had to escort her off. Either way, it would be hilarious. Either way, it would give them something to talk about for weeks. The beauty of the plan was its plausible deniability. If anyone questioned their motives, they could claim they were just being inclusive, just trying to encourage a shy classmate to participate in school activities. They would be the picture of innocence, expressing surprise and disappointment that things hadn't gone better for poor Ruby. Madison had been planning variations of this scheme since the beginning of the school year, waiting for the right opportunity and the right target. Ruby Murphy was perfect, quiet enough not to have many allies, poor enough to feel grateful for any attention, and just visible enough that her public humiliation would have a decent-sized audience. What Madison didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Ruby Murphy wasn't quite as friendless as she appeared, that a certain single father had been meeting her by the playground every Tuesday, listening to her sing with a voice that could stop conversations and silence rooms. That Ruby's gift wasn't the tentative, undeveloped talent Madison imagined, but something rare and powerful that had been growing in secret, nurtured by nothing more than necessity and natural ability. Madison also didn't know that Arthur Stewart had been spending his evenings researching talent shows, thinking about ways to encourage Ruby to share her gift with the world, wondering if there might be opportunities for her to sing in settings where her voice would be appreciated rather than overlooked. That Friday afternoon, Arthur arrived at his usual spot in the school parking lot with more than his typical early parent anxiety. All week, he'd been thinking about Ruby's voice, about the way she created melodies out of thin air, about the casual mention that she needed music, the way other people needed food or sleep. He'd been thinking about Emma's observation that Ruby seemed sad but strong, and about Mrs. Patterson's comment that teachers had noticed Ruby's creative talents. Most of all, he'd been thinking about opportunity, about how many gifted kids got overlooked because they didn't have parents who could afford lessons or advocates who understood their potential. About how Ruby's voice deserved to be heard by people who could recognize its worth, not just by one broken father on a deserted playground. When Ruby appeared on the swing set at 4:30, Arthur was ready with a question that had been building in his mind all week. "Ruby," he said after she'd finished singing. Today it was a haunting version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow that she'd somehow made entirely her own. "Have you ever thought about performing? I mean, really performing for an audience?" Ruby's swing slowed to a stop. "What do you mean?" "I mean sharing your voice with other people. You have a gift, Ruby, a real gift. And gifts like yours are meant to be shared." Ruby was quiet for a long moment, her hands gripping the swing's chains. "I don't think people would want to hear me sing," she said finally. I don't have training or anything fancy to wear or—" "Ruby," Arthur interrupted gently, "some of the most beautiful music in the world comes from people who never had formal training. What you have, this natural ability, this instinct for melody, that's not something you can learn in lessons. That's something you're born with." "But I get scared when people look at me," Ruby admitted. "In class, when Mrs. Henderson calls on me, sometimes I forget how to talk. I can't imagine standing up in front of a whole bunch of people and singing." Arthur nodded, understanding. He remembered that feeling from his own childhood, the way attention could feel like a spotlight that was too bright, too hot, too exposing. But he also remembered the regret that came from not taking chances, from letting fear make decisions that should have been made by courage. "What if I told you that being scared is normal?" Arthur said. "That even professional singers get nervous. Before they perform, what if I told you that the scared feeling doesn't mean you shouldn't do something? It just means that something matters to you. Ruby considered this, her dark eyes serious. Have you ever been scared to do something but done it anyway? Arthur thought about Emma's diagnosis, about the months of treatment when he'd been terrified every single day, but had kept showing up, kept fighting, kept believing they would get through it. Yes, he said simply, some of the most important things I've ever done, I did while I was scared. What happened? Sometimes it went better than I expected, sometimes it went worse. But every time, I was glad I tried. Ruby was quiet again, and Arthur could almost see her mind working, weighing possibilities against fears, dreams against practical realities. Mr. Stewart, she said finally, if there was a chance for me to sing for people, and if I got too scared to do it, would you think I was a coward? Arthur's heart clenched at the vulnerability in her voice, at the way she seemed to expect disappointment. From adults, as a matter of course. Ruby, wanting to be brave and being ready to be brave are two different things. If you weren't ready, that wouldn't make you a coward. That would just make you human. But what if I was ready? Or what if I thought I might be ready? Then I would be honored to help you in any way I could. Ruby nodded slowly as if making some internal decision. Okay, she said, if something came up, some chance to sing, I'll think about it. Really think about it. Arthur smiled. That's all anyone can ask. As Ruby gathered her things for the bus, neither of them knew that the chance to sing was already being planned by Madison Taylor and her friends. Neither of them knew that Ruby's name was about to be added to a talent show registration form as part of a cruel joke designed to humiliate her in front of the entire school community. But they also didn't know that Ruby Murphy was stronger than Madison Taylor imagined, that her voice was more powerful than anyone suspected, and that she was about to have an ally in the audience who understood what it meant to fight for something precious. Sometimes the most important performances begin, not with confidence or training or elaborate preparation, but with a quiet conversation between two people who understand that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to do something meaningful despite the fear. Arthur Stewart drove home that evening, thinking about talent shows and opportunities, and the particular kind of bravery it took for a 9-year-old girl to consider sharing her gift with the world. Ruby Murphy rode the bus home, thinking about scared feelings and important things, and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, her voice was worth hearing. Neither of them knew that Madison Taylor was spending her Friday evening perfecting the details of a plan that would test both of their definitions of courage. But they would find out soon enough. And when they did, Ruby would discover that having one person believe in you could make all the difference between a moment of humiliation and a moment of triumph. Arthur would discover that sometimes protecting someone else's dreams could help you remember your own. The talent show was still 3 weeks away, but the real performance, the one that would matter most, was about to begin. Monday morning arrived, with the kind of gray November sky that made everything feel heavier, more serious, as if the weather itself was conspiring to make difficult days even harder. Ruby Murphy walked through the hallways of Westmont Elementary with her usual careful invisibility, clutching her worn backpack and keeping her eyes down to avoid accidentally making contact with anyone who might remind her that she didn't quite belong. She'd spent the weekend thinking about her conversation with Arthur Stewart, turning his words over in her mind like smooth stones she could examine from every angle. The idea of singing for an audience both thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. On one hand, she loved music more than almost anything else in her small world. It was the one place where she felt truly herself, truly free. On the other hand, the thought of standing in front of strangers, being looked at and judged and potentially found wanting, made her stomach churn with the kind of anxiety that could steal her voice entirely. Ruby was so lost in these thoughts that she almost didn't notice Madison Taylor approaching her locker. Madison, who had never spoken directly to Ruby in the 3 months since school started. Madison, who moved through the elementary school social hierarchy like royalty, surrounded by friends who hung on her every word and teachers who smiled extra brightly when she raised her hand in class. Ruby! Madison's voice was bright, friendly, with a warmth that immediately made Ruby suspicious. In her experience, when popular kids suddenly paid attention to her, it usually meant trouble was coming. "Hi," Ruby replied cautiously, continuing to organize her books while trying to appear busy and unavailable for whatever Madison might want. "I've been meaning to talk to you," Madison continued, undeterred by Ruby's obvious discomfort. "Ashley and I were just saying how we never really get to hang out with you, and that's such a shame because you seem really cool." Ruby blinked in surprise. Cool was the last word anyone had ever used to describe her. Quiet, maybe. Polite, sometimes, but never cool. "Oh," she said, because she couldn't think of anything else to respond. "We saw the flyers for the talent show," Ashley chimed in, appearing at Madison's shoulder with perfect timing. "And we were thinking about what we might do, and then Madison had this amazing idea." Ruby's hand stilled on her locker door. Something about the way they were looking at her, with bright, expectant smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes, made her want to close her locker and walk away. But years of being taught to be polite to adults had extended to being polite to classmates, even when those classmates made her nervous. "We heard you singing once," Madison said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "In the hallway after school. You have such a beautiful voice, Ruby, like really beautiful. Way better than most kids our age." Ruby felt heat creep up her neck. She couldn't remember singing in the hallways. She was always so careful to keep her music to herself when she was at school. But maybe once, maybe when she thought no one was around, maybe she'd hummed something without realizing it. "We think you should totally sign up for the talent show," Ashley added enthusiastically. "I mean, with a voice like yours, you'd probably win the whole thing." The words hit Ruby like a physical impact. Win the whole thing. The idea was so far outside her realm of possibility that she almost laughed. Kids like her didn't win things. Kids like her tried to stay invisible, tried not to draw attention, tried not to give anyone reasons to look too closely at their second-hand clothes or their free lunch forms or their addresses in the less nice part of town. "I don't think," Ruby started, but Madison interrupted her. "Oh, come on, don't be so modest. You're really talented and it would be so fun to watch you perform. We're all going to sign up too. I'm doing a dance routine and Ashley's playing a violin. It'll be like having our whole class represented." Ruby noticed that Jessica, the third member of Madison's usual group, was standing a few feet away, watching the conversation with an expression that looked almost guilty. But when Ruby met her eyes, Jessica quickly looked away. "I don't really perform," Ruby said carefully. "I just sing sometimes when I'm by myself." "But that's exactly what makes you so special," Madison exclaimed, and her enthusiasm seemed so genuine that Ruby felt her defenses starting to lower. "You're natural. You don't have all that formal training that makes some people sound so artificial. You sound real. Real." Ruby had never thought of her voice that way, but something about the word resonated with her. She did feel real when she sang, more real than any other time, more herself than she ever managed to be in regular conversation. "Plus," Ashley added, "we could help you pick out a song, maybe even help you practice. It would be fun to have a project together." The offer of friendship, even temporary friendship, was almost more tempting than the talent show itself. Ruby had spent so much of the school year eating lunch alone, working on group projects by herself, watching other kids form the kind of easy alliances that seemed to come naturally to everyone but her. The idea that Madison Taylor and her friends wanted to include her in something felt like winning a lottery she hadn't even known she'd entered. but something still felt wrong about the whole interaction. Maybe it was the way Madison's smile seemed a little too bright, or the way Ashley kept glancing around as if she was worried about being overheard. Maybe it was the way they'd appeared so suddenly with such a specific agenda, or the way they were pushing just a little too hard for an immediate answer. "I need to think about it," Ruby said finally. Madison's smile flickered for just a moment, so briefly that Ruby almost missed it. "Of course, but don't think too long. Registration closes next Friday, and I'd hate for you to miss the deadline just because you were being shy." "We really do think you'd be amazing," Ashley added. "And it would mean so much to us to have another friend in the show. Like I said, we could all help each other practice. After they walked away, Ruby stood at her locker for several more minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Part of her was thrilled, genuinely excited about the possibility that she might have friends, that people might actually want to spend time with her, that her voice might be worth sharing with others. But another part of her, the part that had learned to be cautious through years of disappointment, whispered warnings she couldn't quite ignore. The rest of the day passed in a blur of confusion and conflicting emotions. During lunch, Ruby noticed Madison and her friends huddled together at their usual table, occasionally glancing in her direction and giggling in a way that made her stomach twist with uncertainty. Were they talking about the talent show? About song choices and practice schedules and the fun they'd have working together? Or were they talking about something else entirely? In math class, Ruby caught Jessica looking at her with that same guilty expression she'd worn during the morning conversation. When their eyes met, Jessica quickly looked down at her worksheet, her cheeks flushing pink. Ruby wanted to ask her what was wrong, but Jessica spent the rest of the period avoiding eye contact entirely. By the time the final bell rang, Ruby's excitement had curdled into something that felt more like dread. The logical part of her mind reminded her that Madison and Ashley had been nothing but kind and encouraging. They'd complimented her voice, offered to help her prepare, promised to include her in their group. What more could she ask for from potential friends? But the intuitive part of her mind, the part that had kept her safe through foster homes and new schools and countless situations where adults' words didn't match their intentions, kept whispering that something was off, that this sudden interest in her welfare felt calculated rather than genuine, that maybe, just maybe, she was being set up for something that would hurt her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The late bus ride home was torture. Ruby stared out the window at the grey November landscape and tried to make sense of her swirling emotions. She wanted so badly to believe that Madison and Ashley were sincere, that they really thought she was talented, that they genuinely wanted to be her friends. She wanted to believe that singing in the talent show would be the beginning of something wonderful rather than the setup for something humiliating. But wanting something to be true and trusting that it was true were two very different things. And Ruby Murphy had learned, through experiences that had taught her to be older than her years, that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. That night, lying in her narrow bed in the small apartment she shared with her aunt, Ruby stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine herself on a stage. Sometimes the image was beautiful, herself in a pretty dress, singing with confidence while an audience listened with respect and appreciation. Sometimes the image was terrifying, herself frozen with fear, forgetting the words, becoming a spectacle, a failure, while people pointed and laughed. She thought about Arthur Stewart's words about courage, about doing important things while scared. She thought about Emma's friendly smile and Mrs. Patterson's offer to help with art club. She thought about the feeling of singing alone on the playground when her voice felt like the most true and honest part of herself. And she thought about Madison Taylor's bright smile, and Ashley's enthusiastic encouragement, and the nagging voice in the back of her mind that whispered warnings she desperately wanted to ignore. Ruby Murphy was 9 years old, and she was about to make a decision that would change everything. She just wasn't sure yet whether that change would lift her up or tear her down, but she was beginning to suspect that the only way to find out was to take the risk and see what happened. Tomorrow, she would have to decide whether to trust the popular girls who'd suddenly taken an interest in her, or to listen to the small voice that told her to be careful, to stay safe, to remain invisible. Tomorrow, she would have to choose between the possibility of friendship and the certainty of solitude. Tomorrow, Ruby Murphy would have to decide whether her voice was worth the risk of being heard. Tuesday afternoon couldn't come fast enough for Ruby Murphy. All night, she tossed and turned in her narrow bed, Madison Taylor's words echoing in her mind like a song she couldn't stop humming. "You have such a beautiful voice, Ruby. Like really beautiful." The compliment felt foreign on her ears, strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. No one had ever called her beautiful, not her voice, not her drawings, not anything about her, but alongside the warmth of those words came the persistent chill of doubt. Something in Madison's smile hadn't felt quite right. Something in Ashley's enthusiasm had seemed forced, and Jessica's guilty expression kept flashing through Ruby's memory like a warning light she couldn't ignore. By the time 4:30 rolled around, Ruby was practically running toward the playground behind Westmont Elementary. She needed to sing, needed to feel the familiar comfort of music filling the empty spaces in her chest. But more than that, she needed to talk to Arthur Stewart. In the short time she'd known him, he'd become the closest thing she had to a trusted adult, someone who listened without judgment, who seemed to see value in her that she couldn't see in herself. Arthur was already waiting by the swings when she arrived, and the sight of his kind face made something tight in Ruby's chest finally loosen. He looked different today, she noticed. Less tired, maybe, or less sad, as if their weekly meetings had been good for him too. "Ruby," he said with a warm smile, "you look like you have something on your mind." Ruby dropped her backpack in the wood chips and settled onto her usual swing, but she didn't start singing immediately like she normally did. Instead, she gripped the chains and looked down at her feet, trying to find the words for the confusion that had been eating at her since yesterday morning. "Mr. Stewart, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Anything." "How do you know when someone is being nice to you because they really want to be your friend, and when they're being nice because they want something from you?" Arthur felt something shift in his chest, a protective instinct that was becoming familiar when it came to Ruby Murphy. The question was too sophisticated, too weary for a 9-year-old. It spoke of experiences that had taught her to be suspicious of kindness, to look for ulterior motives in what should have been simple human connection. "That's a very wise question," Arthur said carefully, settling into the swing beside her. "What's making you wonder about that?" Ruby told him about Monday morning, about Madison and Ashley's sudden interest in her voice, about their encouragement to join the talent show, and their offers of friendship and help. She described Madison's bright smile and Ashley's enthusiasm, but also Jessica's guilty expression and her own nagging sense that something wasn't quite right about the whole interaction. "They said they heard me singing once," Ruby finished, her voice small and uncertain. "And they said I was really good, better than most kids our age. But I don't remember singing where anyone could hear me, and I've never really thought I was that good at anything." Arthur listened with the careful attention he'd learned to give Emma when she was working through something complicated, letting Ruby's words settle in the space between them before responding. He could see the longing in her expression, the desperate want to believe that she was talented, that she was worthy of friendship, that the popular kids had noticed something special about her. But he could also see the fear, the hard-won wisdom that told her to be cautious when things seemed too good to be true. "Ruby," Arthur said gently, "you mentioned that you don't remember singing where someone could hear you. Where do you usually sing?" "Here mostly. On the playground after school, sometimes at home when my aunt is working late." Ruby's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "But there's never anyone around here when I sing. The buses have all left, and most of the teachers are gone too." Arthur nodded slowly. "So, if Madison and Ashley heard you singing, when do you think that would have been?" Ruby was quiet for a long moment, her mind working through the implications. "I don't know," she said finally. "Maybe they didn't really hear me sing. Maybe they just said that." "Maybe," Arthur agreed. "And if they didn't really hear you sing, why do you think they would tell you they did?" The question hung in the air between them, and Arthur watched as Ruby processed what he was gently helping her discover. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, realization, hurt, and finally a kind of resigned sadness that made Arthur's heart ache. "They're making fun of me," Ruby said quietly. "They want me to sign up for the talent show so I'll embarrass myself in front of everyone." Arthur wanted to reach over and hug her, to somehow shield her from the cruelty of children who found entertainment in others' pain. But he also recognized that Ruby was working through this herself, using her own intelligence and intuition to see through the deception. "I'm sorry, Ruby. I think you might be right about that." Ruby's grip on the swing chains tightened. "Why would they do that? I never did anything to them. I don't even talk to them. Arthur was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain the complicated psychology of bullying to a 9-year-old who was experiencing it firsthand. "Sometimes," he said finally, "people who feel insecure about themselves try to make themselves feel better by making someone else feel worse. It doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable, I guess." "So they think I'm an easy target," Ruby said with a bitterness that was jarring in such a young voice. "The weird girl with the old clothes who eats lunch alone." "Ruby, look at me," Arthur said firmly. When she met his eyes, he continued, "What Madison and Ashley think about you says nothing about who you really are. Nothing. You are not weird, you are not a target, and you are certainly not someone who deserves to be treated cruelly." Tears were threatening at the corners of Ruby's eyes, but she blinked them back with the practiced control of someone who'd learned not to cry in public. "But maybe they're right about me being a bad singer. Maybe I only sound good to myself because I want to sound good." This was the moment Arthur had been dreading and preparing for, the moment when Ruby's confidence, already fragile, threatened to shatter completely under the weight of cruel intentions and self-doubt. He thought about his own journey over the past 2 years, about how easily despair could take root when you stopped believing in your own worth. "Ruby, do you remember what I told you about courage? About doing important things while you're scared?" Ruby nodded. "Well, I want to tell you something else about courage. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is trust yourself. Trust your own voice, your own instincts, your own worth, even when other people are trying to convince you that you're not valuable." Arthur took a deep breath, feeling like he was about to share something he'd barely admitted to himself. "When Emma was sick, I stopped believing in a lot of things. I stopped believing I was a good father, stopped believing things would get better, stopped believing I deserved happiness or success or any of the things I used to think were possible. And you know what? That doubt, that loss of faith in myself, hurt me more than anything else that was happening." Ruby was listening intently, her dark eyes fixed on his face. "But then I met you," Arthur continued, "and I heard you sing. and I saw the way music lives in you like it's part of your DNA, and it reminded me that there are things in this world that are true and beautiful and worth protecting, even when, especially when, other people can't see their value. You really think I can sing? Ruby asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ruby, I think you have one of the most honest, pure voices I've ever heard. I think music flows out of you the way most people breathe, naturally, necessarily beautifully, and I think anyone who would try to use your gift as a weapon against you doesn't deserve to hear it. Ruby was quiet for several minutes, swinging gently back and forth as she processed Arthur's words. Finally, she said, "So, what should I do? About the talent show, I mean." Arthur smiled, feeling something settle into place in his chest. A sense of purpose he hadn't experienced since before Emma's diagnosis. "I think," he said carefully, "that you should make that decision based on what you want, not on what Madison and Ashley want. If you want to sing for people, really want to share your gift, then we'll find a way to make that happen safely, with people who will appreciate what you have to offer. But if you're not ready, or if you don't want to, that's okay too. And if I do want to sing for people someday, but not for Madison and Ashley's entertainment, then we'll figure out how to make that happen together." Ruby nodded slowly, and for the first time since Monday morning, she looked like herself again, not the confused, hopeful girl who'd been tempted by false friendship, but the strong, intuitive young woman who'd been surviving on her own wisdom, and for longer than she should have had to. "Mr. Stewart," she said, "I think I'd like to sing now. Not for any talent show, not for anyone else, just for me. And for you, if that's okay." Arthur felt tears prick at his own eyes. "I would be honored to listen." Ruby began to sing, something soft and wordless and entirely her own creation. It was a melody that spoke of disappointment, transformed into wisdom, of hurt acknowledged but not allowed to fester, of a young voice finding its strength not in spite of the world's cruelty, but because of her decision to rise above it. As Arthur listened, he realized that this moment, this gift of music shared between two people who understood something about resilience, was exactly what he'd been missing for the past 2 years. Not just beauty, but purpose. Not just healing for himself, but the opportunity to protect and nurture someone else's light. Ruby Murphy was going to be okay. She was going to be more than okay. And Arthur Stewart was going to make sure of it. Next morning, Ruby Murphy walked into Westmont Elementary with something she'd never carried before: certainty. Not the brittle kind of certainty that came from trying to convince yourself of something you wanted to believe, but the solid, unshakable certainty that came from finally understanding exactly who you were and what you were worth. Madison Taylor was waiting by Ruby's locker again, her blonde hair perfectly styled and her smile as bright as a camera flash. Ashley stood beside her, practically bouncing with what looked like excitement, but felt like anticipation of a different kind. They'd clearly been planning this second conversation, positioning themselves to intercept Ruby before first period. "Ruby!" Madison's voice carried that same artificial enthusiasm as the day before. "Did you think about what we talked about the talent show?" Ruby finished hanging up her jacket and turned to face them with a calmness that seemed to surprise both girls. "I did think about it," she said simply. "And," Ashley prompted, leaning forward slightly, as if Ruby's answer was the most important. "The thing she'd hear all day. And I've decided not to sign up," Ruby said, her voice steady and clear, "but thank you for thinking of me." The transformation on Madison's face was swift and unmistakable. The bright smile faltered, replaced by something harder, more calculating. "What do you mean you're not signing up? I thought you wanted to be friends with us." Ruby felt the familiar twist in her stomach that came with confrontation. But Arthur Stewart's words from the day before echoed in her mind. "Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is trust yourself." She took a breath and held Madison's gaze. "I do want friends," Ruby said quietly, "but I want friends who actually like me, not friends who are pretending to like me for other reasons." Ashley's cheeks flushed pink, and she glanced quickly at Madison as if looking for guidance. Madison's mask slipped completely for just a moment, revealing something cold and mean that made Ruby glad she'd trusted her instincts. "I don't know what you're talking about," Madison said, but her voice had lost its friendly warmth. "We were just trying to be nice to you." "I know," Ruby replied, "and I appreciate that. But I also know that you never heard me singing anywhere, because I only sing when I'm alone. So whatever you're really planning, I'd rather not be part of it." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Madison's friends had gathered around the conversation, drawn by the unusual sight of quiet Ruby Murphy standing up to the most popular girl in 4th grade. Even some of the teachers had started to pay attention, though they were pretending to be busy with their morning routines. Finally, Madison shrugged with exaggerated indifference. "Your loss," she said. "We were trying to help you, but if you want to stay invisible forever, that's your choice." As Madison and her friends walked away, Ruby felt something loosen in her chest. She'd done it. She'd faced down the popular kids, trusted her own judgment, and chosen self-respect over the desperate desire to belong. It wasn't the same as feeling happy. She was still the girl with the worn clothes and the second-hand shoes, still the one who ate lunch alone and walked home by herself. But she was no longer the girl who could be manipulated by false promises and fake friendship. Mrs. Henderson noticed the change immediately. During morning reading time, Ruby sat straighter in her chair, participated more actively in discussions, and even volunteered to read aloud when Mrs. Henderson asked for volunteers. It wasn't that Ruby had suddenly become confident. She was still careful, still quiet. But the anxious edge that usually characterized her classroom presence had softened into something more like peace. "Ruby," Mrs. Henderson said after class, "you seem different today. Good different. Is everything okay?" Ruby considered the question seriously. Was everything okay? Her aunt was still working double shifts to pay the bills. They were still living, paycheck to paycheck, in a neighborhood where the heat sometimes got turned off and the refrigerator was usually more empty than full. Ruby still had exactly 0 friends her own age and exactly 3 dresses that she rotated through the week. But she also had Arthur Stewart, who showed up every Tuesday and listened to her sing as if her voice was the most important sound in the world. She had Mrs. Patterson, who'd offered her a scholarship to art club and seemed to genuinely believe Ruby had creative potential. She had Mrs. Henderson, who noticed when her students were struggling and cared enough to ask about it. Most importantly, she had herself, her own voice, her own instincts, her own hard-won wisdom about who to trust and when to be brave. "Yes," Ruby said finally. "I think everything is okay. Thing is okay." That afternoon, Arthur was waiting by the playground swings with something Ruby had never seen before. A guitar case slung over his shoulder. When he saw her approaching, he smiled with an excitement that reminded Ruby of Emma's enthusiasm about her art projects. "I brought something," Arthur said, setting the case down in the wood chips. "I thought maybe we could try something new today." Ruby's eyes widened as Arthur opened the case to reveal a beautiful acoustic guitar, its wood worn smooth and golden from years of use. "Do you play?" she asked. "I used to," Arthur said, lifting the guitar from its case with careful reverence. "Before Emma got sick, before everything got complicated, I used to play quite a bit. I wasn't professional or anything, but I knew enough to accompany simple songs." He strummed a few chords, his fingers finding the familiar positions with muscle memory that had been dormant but not lost. The sound that emerged was warm and rich, filling the empty playground with the kind of music that made you want to sit you down and listen for hours. I was thinking, Arthur continued, tuning one of the strings with practiced precision, that maybe we could make some music together. Not for any talent show, not for anyone else's entertainment, just for us. Just for the joy of it. Ruby felt something spark in her chest, the same feeling she got when she discovered a new melody or heard a song that perfectly matched her mood. You mean like we could be a team? Exactly like that. I could play, you could sing, and we could see what kind of beautiful things we could create together. Arthur began playing a simple progression in a key that he thought would suit Ruby's voice, something gentle and folky that left plenty of room for melody. Ruby listened for a few measures, feeling the rhythm settle into her bones, and then she began to hum along. The harmony that emerged was nothing short of magical. Arthur's guitar provided the foundation, steady, reliable, supportive, while Ruby's voice soared above it, finding melodic lines that complemented the chords in ways that seemed effortless and inevitable. They weren't performing. They were conversing, using music as their language and the empty playground as their concert hall. For the first time in 2 years, Arthur felt like himself again, not the broken single father who worked at a warehouse and worried constantly about money and Emma's health, not the failed insurance adjuster who'd lost everything when life got complicated. Just Arthur, the man who loved music and believed in its power to heal and connect and transform ordinary moments into something sacred. Ruby, meanwhile, was discovering what it felt like to have a musical partner, someone who could follow her melodic instincts and enhance them rather than compete with them. She'd never realized how lonely her singing had been until she had someone to share it with, someone who understood that music wasn't just entertainment, but communication, expression, prayer. They played for nearly an hour, working through simple songs that Ruby knew and improvising new melodies that seemed to emerge from the combination of guitar and voice. By the time Ruby's bus arrived, both of them were flushed with the exhilaration that came from creating something beautiful together. "Same time next week?" Arthur asked as Ruby gathered her backpack. "Same time next week," Ruby confirmed. "But Mr. Stewart, can we maybe practice more than once a week? I mean, if you don't mind?" Arthur's smile was brighter than Ruby had ever seen it. "I would love that. How about Thursday after school too? Same time, same place?" As Ruby walked toward her bus, she felt something she'd never experienced before. Anticipation for the future. Not the anxious kind of anticipation that came with dreading what might go wrong, but the excited kind that came with looking forward to something wonderful. Madison Taylor and her friends could keep their talent show, their fake friendships, their cruel entertainment. Ruby Murphy had found something infinitely more valuable, a true musical partnership, a genuine adult ally, and the beginning of understanding that her voice wasn't just worth hearing, it was worth sharing with people who could appreciate its beauty. The talent show was still 2 weeks away, but Ruby was no longer worried about it. She had her own music now, her own purpose, her own reason to keep singing, and sometimes that was more than enough. 2 weeks later, the night of the Westmont Elementary Talent Show arrived with all the fanfare that only a small-town school event could muster. The gymnasium had been transformed into something that almost resembled a proper auditorium. Rows of folding chairs borrowed from the church next door, a makeshift stage constructed from risers usually reserved for choir concerts, and a sound system that worked most of the time if you didn't mind the occasional feedback squeal. Parents arrived early to claim the best seats, armed with cameras and smartphones and the kind of proud enthusiasm that made even the most modest elementary school performance feel like a Broadway opening night. Teachers bustled around backstage, helping nervous performers with last-minute costume adjustments and offering encouraging words to kids who were beginning to second-guess their decision to sign up. Arthur Stewart sat in the back row, having arrived 30 minutes before the show started to ensure he could find a seat with a clear view of the stage. Emma was beside him, clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers they'd picked from the field behind their apartment complex. She'd insisted on bringing them, saying that performers always deserved flowers, even if, especially if, they didn't. Have family there to give them any? Are you sure Ruby isn't performing tonight? Emma asked for the third time, adjusting the flowers in her lap. I'm sure, Arthur replied, though he kept scanning the crowd for any sign of Ruby's familiar figure. She decided it wasn't the right time for her. What Arthur didn't tell Emma was that he'd been having dreams about this night for the past week. Vivid, anxious dreams where Ruby somehow ended up on that stage anyway, standing alone and terrified, while an audience of strangers waited for her to sing. The dreams always ended the same way, with Arthur trying to reach her but being unable to move, trapped in his seat while Ruby faced her fears without any support. The rational part of his mind knew the dreams were ridiculous. Ruby had been clear about her decision not to participate. She'd faced down Madison Taylor's manipulation with remarkable courage and had chosen to focus on their private musical sessions instead. Just that Thursday, they'd spent an hour working on a beautiful arrangement of Hallelujah that showcased Ruby's voice in ways that made Arthur's chest tight with pride and protectiveness. But the worried father part of his mind, the part that had been hyperactive since Emma's diagnosis, couldn't quite let go of the fear that somehow, some way, Ruby might still end up in a situation where she needed his help. Backstage, the usual pre-performance chaos was in full swing. Madison Taylor stood near the wing, resplendent in a glittery dance costume that probably cost more than Ruby Murphy's entire wardrobe. She was going through her routine one final time, her movements sharp and precise, her confidence absolute. Ashley was nearby, tuning her violin with the careful attention of someone who'd been taking lessons since kindergarten. I still can't believe Ruby chickened out, Madison said to Ashley, not bothering to lower her voice despite the fact that other performers were within earshot. I thought for sure she'd be desperate enough for attention to fall for it. Ashley shifted uncomfortably, her violin case clutched tightly in her hands. Maybe it's better that she didn't sign up. I mean, what if she actually turned out to be good? That would have been really embarrassing for us. Please, Madison scoffed. Girls like Ruby Murphy don't have hidden talents, they just have hidden problems. Jessica, who had been listening to this conversation while adjusting her costume for the group dance number, finally spoke up. Madison, don't you think we should just drop it? She's not even here. I'm just saying, Madison continued, it would have been hilarious to watch her freeze up in front of everyone. Some people need to learn their place. What none of them noticed was that Ruby Murphy was, in fact, there, not as a performer, but as a reluctant audience member. Her aunt, Linda, had surprised her that morning by announcing that they were going to attend the talent show together. You've been so much happier lately, Linda had said over their breakfast of toast and generic cereal. I thought it might be nice for us to do something fun together. Plus, I want to see what all these kids you go to school with are capable of. Ruby had tried to explain that she didn't really know most of her classmates, that she probably wouldn't enjoy watching people perform when she felt so disconnected from them. But Linda had already asked for the evening off from her second job, and Ruby could see how excited her aunt was about the prospect of a normal family activity. So here Ruby was, sitting in the third row with Linda, wearing her nicest dress, the blue one that used to be her sister's, and trying to look interested in the performances while her stomach churned with anxiety. Not because she regretted her decision not to participate, but because being in the same room with Madison and her Friends made her feel exposed and vulnerable in a way she hadn't experienced since their confrontation 2 weeks ago. The show began with the usual elementary school fanfare. The principal, Mrs. Hawkins, welcomed everyone and explained the judging criteria. The first few acts were charming in the way that only fourth-grade performances could be. Earnest, slightly off-key, but delivered with the kind of genuine enthusiasm that made parents tear up and applaud loudly. Arthur watched each performance with half his attention, the other half focused on scanning the audience. That's when he spotted her. Ruby, sitting with a woman who must be her aunt, both of them clapping politely for a group of second graders who were singing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" with more volume than melody. Relief flooded through Arthur's chest, followed immediately by a new kind of anxiety. Ruby was here, which meant she was safe from any last-minute manipulation or coercion. But it also meant she was watching other kids her age perform, seeing them receive applause and recognition for talents that probably weren't any more natural or developed than her own voice. Emma noticed her father's sudden tension. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Arthur said quietly. "I just saw Ruby. She's here with her aunt." Emma's face lit up. "Really? Where?" Arthur pointed, and Emma waved enthusiastically in Ruby's direction until she caught her attention. Ruby waved back, with a small smile that looked genuine but careful. The performances continued. Ashley played her violin piece with technical competence but little soul, the kind of performance that came from years of lessons but not much natural musicality. A group of third graders did a comedy sketch that had the audience laughing more at their forgotten lines than their intended jokes. A fifth grader played piano with impressive skill, earning the biggest applause of the night so far. Then came Madison Taylor's dance routine. Arthur had to admit grudgingly that Madison was talented. Her movements were sharp and controlled. Her timing was perfect, and she commanded the stage with a confidence that was impressive for someone so young. The audience responded enthusiastically, and Arthur could see Madison's parents in the front row, beaming with pride and recording every moment on their phones. But as he watched Madison bow to the applause, Arthur couldn't help thinking about the cruelty that lived behind that polished performance. About the way she tried to manipulate Ruby into a humiliating situation for her own entertainment. About the casual meanness in her voice when she talked about people who were different from her. That's when it happened. As Madison was leaving the stage, she passed close enough to the microphone to be heard throughout the gymnasium, whether intentionally or accidentally. Though Arthur suspected it was intentional, her voice carried clearly as she said to Ashley, "Too bad Ruby Murphy couldn't be here to see what real talent looks like." The comment was quiet enough that many people in the audience missed it, but Ruby heard it. Arthur saw her face change, saw her shoulders stiffen, saw something shift in her expression that made his heart race with protective fury. But then Ruby did something unexpected. Instead of shrinking into her seat or looking away in embarrassment, she stood up, slowly, deliberately, with a calm that seemed to surprise even her aunt. She walked down the aisle toward the stage, her worn blue dress flowing behind her, her chin held high. The gymnasium fell silent. Mrs. Hawkins, who was announcing the next act, stopped mid-sentence. The other performers backstage craned their necks to see what was happening. Madison Taylor, who had just reached the wing, turned around with an expression of shock that would have been comical under different circumstances. Ruby reached the foot of the stage and looked up at Mrs. Hawkins. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the hushed auditorium. "I know I didn't sign up to perform, but would it be possible for me to sing one song?" Mrs. Hawkins looked flustered. "Well, we don't usually. Do you have music prepared?" Ruby turned toward the audience, her eyes finding Arthur's across the rows of chairs. Arthur understood immediately. He stood up, his heart pounding, and raised his hand. "I can accompany her," he called out, "if that's all right." The principal looked from Ruby to Arthur and back again, clearly trying to process this unexpected development. The audience was murmuring with curiosity and anticipation. Parents were whispering to each other, wondering who this girl was and why she'd suddenly decided to perform. "I suppose that would be fine," Mrs. Hawkins said finally, "if you're sure you're prepared." Ruby nodded, then turned back to Arthur. "Same song we practiced Thursday?" she asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. Arthur smiled, pride and terror warring in his chest. "Same song we practiced Thursday." As Arthur made his way to the stage with his guitar, Emma clutching her wildflowers, and following close behind, he realized that Ruby Murphy was about to do something extraordinary. Not because she'd been tricked or manipulated or dared into it, but because she'd chosen it. Because Madison Taylor's casual cruelty had awakened something in Ruby that was stronger than fear, more powerful than self-doubt. Ruby Murphy was about to show an entire gymnasium full of people what real courage looked like. And Arthur Stewart was going to be right there beside her, providing the foundation she needed to let her voice soar. The moment of truth had arrived, and it was nothing like any of them had expected it to be. Arthur Stewart's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the microphone stand and positioned his guitar on the small stool someone had brought from backstage. The gymnasium, which had been buzzing with curious murmurs just moments before, had settled into an expectant silence that felt almost sacred. 300 people, parents, teachers, students, siblings, all focused on the small figure in the blue dress who stood at center stage with a composure that seemed impossible for someone so young. Ruby Murphy had never been the center of attention. In her entire life, she was used to being overlooked, dismissed, invisible. But standing here now, with the stage lights warm on her face and the audience waiting to hear what she had to offer, she felt something she'd never experienced before. The absolute certainty that she belonged exactly where she was. "What song are we doing?" Arthur asked quietly, though he already knew the answer. They'd spent hours perfecting their arrangement of Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen's masterpiece, filtered through Ruby's pure voice and Arthur's gentle guitar work. "Hallelujah," Ruby confirmed, her voice steady. Then, so quietly that only Arthur could hear, she added, "Thank you for believing in me." Arthur felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you for reminding me what's worth believing in." In the audience, Emma Stewart clutched her wildflowers and whispered to her Aunt Linda, who had insisted on moving closer to get a better view. "That's Ruby," Emma said excitedly. "She's amazing. Wait until you hear her sing." Linda looked at this girl who had somehow captured her daughter's enthusiasm and Arthur's protective instincts. Ruby didn't look like much. A thin 9-year-old, in a dress that had seen better days, standing on a makeshift stage in an elementary school gymnasium. But there was something in her posture, something in the way she held herself that suggested depths most people never suspected. In the third row, Ruby's Aunt Linda gripped the program so tightly it crumpled in her hands. She'd never seen her niece volunteer for anything, let alone something as public and exposed as this. Ruby had always been the quiet one, the careful one, the girl who preferred to blend into the background rather than risk drawing unwanted attention. What had changed? What had given her the courage to stand up in front of all these people? Backstage, Madison Taylor watched with an expression that cycled rapidly between shock, anger, and something that might have been fear. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Ruby Murphy was supposed to be at home, safely out of the way, probably relieved that she'd avoided the humiliation Madison had planned for her. She wasn't supposed to be on stage, claiming space and attention that belonged to people like Madison herself. "What is she doing?" Ashley whispered, her violin still clutched in her hands. Making a fool of herself, Madison replied, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. Just wait. She'll freeze up or forget the words or something. Then everyone will see what I was trying to save her from. But Jessica, who had been watching Ruby's face, wasn't so sure. There was something different about Ruby Murphy tonight. Something calm and centered and utterly fearless that Jessica had never seen in any of their classmates. Arthur played the opening chords of Hallelujah, his fingers finding the familiar progressions with muscle memory that felt like coming home. The sound of the guitar filled the gymnasium with warm, honeyed tones that seemed to wrap around the audience like a gentle embrace. He'd chosen a key that would showcase Ruby's voice perfectly, and as the introduction built toward her entrance, he found himself holding his breath. Then Ruby began to sing. The first word, now, hung in the air like a prayer, pure and clear and absolutely perfect in pitch. Arthur felt goosebumps rise on his arms as Ruby's voice soared over his guitar, finding melodic lines that he'd heard her practice, but that somehow sounded entirely new in this setting, with this audience, in this moment. Now I've heard there was a secret chord that David played, and it pleased the Lord, and it pleased the Lord. Ruby's voice was everything Arthur had known it could be and more. It was technically flawless, every note perfectly placed, every word clearly articulated. But more than that, it was emotionally devastating. She wasn't just singing the song. She was living it, breathing it, making it her own, in a way that transformed Cohen's already powerful lyrics into something transcendent. The audience was transfixed. Parents who had been checking their phones moments before were now completely still, their attention captured by this unexpected gift. Teachers who had seen hundreds of elementary school performances over the years found themselves blinking back tears. Even the other students who typically fidgeted and whispered during the slower acts sat in perfect silence. But you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift. As Ruby reached the chorus, her voice opened up into something that was simultaneously powerful and vulnerable, strong and tender. She wasn't performing. She was sharing something essential about herself, something that had been waiting inside her for exactly this moment, exactly this audience. Arthur played with a skill and sensitivity that surprised even him. The guitar didn't compete with Ruby's voice, but supported it, provided the foundation that allowed her to take risks and explore the melody in ways that felt both careful and fearless. They were having a musical conversation, two voices speaking the same language, creating something together that neither could have achieved alone. In the front row, Mrs. Hawkins sat with her mouth slightly open, completely forgetting her role as the evening's master of ceremonies. She'd been an educator for 25 years, had heard thousands of student performances, but nothing had prepared her for this. This wasn't just a talented student giving a good performance. This was art, pure and simple. This was a voice that belonged on professional stages, not in elementary school gymnasiums. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. As Ruby sang the final chorus, her voice seemed to fill every corner of the gymnasium, touching something deep in the chest of everyone who heard it. The song wasn't just about music anymore. It was about courage, about finding your voice despite the world's attempts to silence you, about the particular kind of beauty that emerges when someone finally allows themselves to be fully seen. Arthur played the final chord, letting it ring out into the silence that followed. For a moment, one perfect, crystalline moment, the gymnasium was completely still. Not the awkward silence that sometimes followed mediocre performances, but the reverent silence that comes when people have witnessed something genuinely extraordinary. Then, the applause began. It started with Emma Stewart, who jumped to her feet so quickly she nearly dropped her wildflowers. Then Linda, Ruby's aunt, who was crying openly as she clapped with fierce pride, then Mrs. Henderson, Ruby's teacher, who was shaking her head in amazement as she applauded. Within seconds, the entire gymnasium was on its feet, applauding with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for professional concerts. Ruby stood at the microphone, her eyes wide with surprise and something that might have been joy. She'd expected to feel scared, to feel exposed, to regret her impulsive decision to perform. Instead, she felt complete, as if she'd finally found the missing piece of herself that she'd been searching for without even knowing it. Arthur stood beside her, his guitar hanging from its strap, his face glowing with pride and something deeper, the satisfaction that comes from helping someone else discover their true potential. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of something beautiful, something meaningful, something that reminded you why music mattered in the first place. The standing ovation continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Parents were wiping their eyes, teachers were shaking their heads in amazement, and students were staring at Ruby as if seeing her for the first time, which in many ways they were. When the applause finally died down, Mrs. Hawkins took the microphone with slightly shaking hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I think we can all agree that we've just witnessed something very special here tonight." More applause, and Ruby felt her cheeks flush with a warmth that had nothing to do with the stage lights. "Ruby," Mrs. Hawkins continued, "that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing your gift with us." In the audience, people were already pulling out their phones, not to check messages, but to call friends and family members. "You should have been here," they would say. "There was this girl, this 9-year-old, and she sang Hallelujah, like nothing I've ever heard before." Backstage, Madison Taylor stood frozen, her carefully constructed social hierarchy crumbling around her. Every assumption she'd made about Ruby Murphy, about her worth, her talent, her place in the world, had just been proven spectacularly wrong. And every person in that gymnasium had witnessed it. As Ruby and Arthur made their way off the stage, they were surrounded by people wanting to congratulate them, to ask questions, to express their amazement. Teachers were talking about recording opportunities and music programs. Parents were asking about lessons and competitions. Someone mentioned calling the local newspaper, but through it all, Ruby kept her eyes on Arthur, the man who had seen her potential before she'd even known it existed, the man who had chosen to believe in her voice when she couldn't believe in it herself. "Mr. Stewart," she said quietly, as they finally found a moment of relative calm backstage. "What happens now?" Arthur smiled, thinking about talent scouts and music programs and all the opportunities that would probably come flooding in after tonight. But mostly, he thought about Tuesday afternoons on the playground, about the simple joy of making music together, about the particular miracle of watching someone discover who they really were. "Now," he said gently, "the world gets to hear what I've known all along, that Ruby Murphy has one of the most beautiful voices on earth." Ruby grinned, the first completely unguarded, joyful expression Arthur had ever seen from her. "And now, you get to remember that you're not just Emma's dad or a guy who works at a warehouse. You're Arthur Stewart, and you're a musician, and you just helped change someone's life." As they stood there in the chaos of backstage celebration, both of them understood that this was just the beginning. The real performance, the one that would last for years to come, was just getting started. 6 months later, the small rehearsal room at the Westmont Community Center buzzed with the kind of controlled chaos that only came from a dozen young voices learning to harmonize together. Ruby Murphy stood at the front of the room, no longer the invisible girl in worn dresses, but still recognizably herself, thoughtful, gentle, but now radiating a quiet confidence that drew people to her rather than encouraging them to look away. "Remember," she said to the group of 8 to 12-year-olds gathered in a semicircle around her, Singing isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about letting people hear who you really are. Arthur Stewart watched from the back of the room, his guitar propped against the wall, marveling at how naturally Ruby had stepped into the role of mentor. The Second Chances music program, as they decided to call it, had started as an informal idea. What if they could create a safe space for kids who felt overlooked or undervalued to discover their own musical voices? What had begun as Tuesday afternoon sessions with just Ruby and Arthur had grown into something neither of them had imagined possible. The program was free, funded by donations that had poured in after a local news station picked up the story of Ruby's impromptu talent show performance. The video had gone viral in the way that only genuinely moving content could, shared not for shock value or entertainment, but because people recognized something authentic and hopeful in the sight of a 9-year-old girl finding her courage in front of an entire community. But more than the viral video, more than the donations, more than the recognition, what mattered most to Arthur was watching Ruby discover that her gift wasn't just her voice. It was her ability to help others find theirs. "Okay, everyone," Ruby said, clapping her hands together. "Let's try Amazing Grace one more time. And remember what Mr. Stewart taught us about breathing from your diaphragm." Arthur smiled at the easy way Ruby referenced their shared knowledge. The partnership that had evolved from mentorship into something more like collaboration. He'd been amazed to discover that teaching music to kids who needed it wasn't just rewarding, it was healing. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he remembered a little more of who he'd been before fear and grief had convinced him he had nothing valuable to offer the world. In the front row of young singers, 10-year-old Marcus Williams, a boy who'd been bounced between foster homes almost as often as Ruby had been, raised his hand tentatively. "Ruby, what if I mess up the words again?" Ruby's smile was warm and understanding. "Then you'll mess up the words and we'll keep singing anyway. That's what friends do. They don't stop the music just because someone makes a mistake." Arthur felt his chest tighten with pride. Ruby had learned that lesson the hard way through Madison Taylor's cruelty and her own moments of self-doubt, but she'd transformed that painful knowledge into wisdom she could share with others who needed to hear it. The door to the rehearsal room opened quietly, and Emma Stewart slipped inside, her arms full of art supplies and her face bright with the enthusiasm that had only grown stronger since her father had rediscovered his musical identity. At 9 years old, she'd become the unofficial visual artist for the music program, creating flyers and programs and stage decorations with the same intuitive talent that Ruby brought to singing. "Dad," Emma whispered, settling beside Arthur in the back of the room, "Mrs. Patterson wants to know if Ruby would be interested in doing another community performance next month. The Arts Council is planning a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital." Arthur nodded, though he'd learned to let Ruby make her own decisions about performances. The talent show had opened doors to opportunities they'd never imagined. Invitations to sing at community events, offers to audition for regional youth choirs, even a scholarship opportunity at a prestigious music camp. But Ruby approached each possibility with the same careful wisdom that had saved her from Madison's cruel joke. She performed when it felt right, when it served a purpose beyond just showcasing her talent. The music program had become that purpose. Every performance Ruby gave now was in service of raising awareness and funds for the Second Chances program, ensuring that other kids who felt invisible would have a place to discover their own voices. "Tell Mrs. Patterson we'll discuss it," Arthur said quietly. "But I think Ruby will want to know if some of the other kids can perform too." Emma grinned. "That's exactly what she said you'd say," as the session wound down and parents began arriving. To pick up their young singers, Arthur noticed a familiar figure hovering near the doorway. Jessica Palmer, formerly part of Madison Taylor's inner circle, had been showing up to watch the music sessions for the past month, always staying in the background, never quite working up the courage to join in. Ruby noticed her too. After saying goodbye to the other kids, she walked over to where Jessica stood, her expression kind but cautious. "Hi, Jessica," Ruby said simply. "Hi." Jessica's voice was barely above a whisper. "That sounded really good. The singing, I mean." "Thank you. We're always looking for new members if you're interested." Jessica bit her lip, clearly wrestling with something internal. "I don't think I'm good enough. I've never really sung before, except in church sometimes." Ruby smiled, the same gentle smile she'd offered Arthur that first day on the playground. "Neither had most of us when we started. The only requirement is wanting to try." "But what about what happened before, with Madison and everything?" Ruby was quiet for a moment, and Arthur found himself holding his breath, wondering how she would navigate this delicate territory. Madison Taylor had left Westmont Elementary in February, her family moving to another district after the talent show incident had made her social position untenable. The cruel joke that was supposed to humiliate Ruby had instead revealed Madison's true character to the entire school community. "What happened before was about Madison, not you," Ruby said. "Finally, and besides, we're all different people than we were 6 months ago. I think you should give yourself the chance to find out who you want to be now." Jessica nodded slowly, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Could I maybe just listen next week, before I decide if I want to join?" "Of course. And Jessica, if you do decide to join, you'll be welcome here, everyone is." As Jessica hurried away to meet her mother in the parking lot, Arthur approached Ruby with a pride that felt too large for his chest. "That was beautifully handled," he said. Ruby shrugged, but Arthur could see the satisfaction in her expression. "Everyone deserves a second chance to be better than they were." "Is that what this program is really about?" Arthur asked. "Second chances?" Ruby considered the question seriously, the way she always did when asked about something important. "I think it's about first chances, actually. First chances for kids to discover they're worth listening to. First chances to feel like they belong somewhere. First chances to realize they have something valuable to offer the world." Arthur nodded, thinking about his own journey over the past 6 months. The warehouse job was just a job now, not a symbol of everything he'd lost. He'd started taking on private music students in the evenings, rediscovering the joy of teaching scales and chord progressions to kids whose parents saw music as enrichment rather than necessity. The insurance career felt like something that had happened to someone else. Not lost, exactly, but outgrown. Most importantly, Emma was thriving. Not just surviving her remission, but flourishing in the way that kids do when they see their parents, happy and fulfilled. She'd become Ruby's biggest cheerleader and closest friend, the sister Ruby had never had, and the creative collaborator Emma had always needed. "Mr. Stewart," Ruby said as they packed up the music stands and folded the chairs, "can I ask you something?" "Always. Do you think my sister would have been proud of me for the music program and everything?" Arthur felt his throat tighten. Ruby rarely talked about her sister, the one who died in the car accident that had led to Ruby living with her aunt. But sometimes, in quiet moments like this, she'd reference that loss with the matter-of-fact sadness of someone who'd learned to carry grief without letting it define her. "Ruby," Arthur said gently, "I think your sister would be amazed by who you've become. Not just the singing, but the way you care for other people. The way you turn your own pain into something that helps others heal." Ruby nodded, satisfied with his answer. "I hope so. I like to think she can hear me when I sing, you know? Like maybe music is how we stay connected to people we've lost." Arthur thought about his own losses, about the version of himself he'd mourned for 2 years, about the dreams he'd thought were buried forever. "Maybe it is," he said. Maybe that's what makes music so powerful. It's how we remember who we were and discover who we're becoming, all at the same time. As they walked out to the parking lot together, Arthur reflected on how much had changed since that first afternoon when he'd heard Ruby singing alone on the playground. The broken single father and the invisible girl had found each other at exactly the moment when they both needed to remember that they were worth something, that they had gifts to offer, that their voices mattered. Ruby was no longer the girl who ate lunch alone or tried to make herself invisible. She was a leader, a teacher, a beacon for other kids who needed to know they weren't alone. Arthur was no longer the man who'd lost his sense of purpose, along with his career and confidence. He was a mentor, a musician, a father who'd remembered how to model courage and resilience for his daughter. But most importantly, they'd learned that sometimes the most profound healing comes not from being saved by someone else, but from discovering that you have the power to save yourself, and in doing so, to save others. The Second Chances music program would continue to grow, drawing kids from across the district who needed to know that their voices were worth hearing. Ruby would continue to perform, not as a spectacle or entertainment, but as a beacon of hope for anyone who'd ever felt overlooked or undervalued. Arthur would continue to provide the foundation that allowed others to soar, finding in their success a satisfaction deeper than any personal achievement. And sometimes, on quiet Tuesday afternoons, when the formal session was over and it was just the two of them in the rehearsal room, Ruby would sing and Arthur would play. And they would remember that this is how miracles really happen, not with fanfare or headlines, but with one person choosing to believe in another, one voice choosing to trust itself, one moment of courage that ripples outward into countless other lives. The girl who was supposed to be a joke had become a joy. The man who thought he was broken had discovered he was just healing, and together they'd created something beautiful from the ruins of what they'd lost, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the quietest voices finally deciding their worth being heard. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.